Good evening. Welcome to the Design Review Board meeting of February 10th, 2022. The Design Review Board meeting is now called to order. Due to the COVID-19 coronavirus and the health recommendations from the Los Angeles County Health Department, the Design Review Board meeting is being conducted virtually with no members of the public present. The public is encouraged to watch and participate from the safety of their homes. The Design Review Board meeting is being broadcast live on Glendale TV, viewable on Spectrum Cable Channel 6, and on AT&T UVerse Channel 99. Meetings are also streamed live in high definition on the city's webpage at www.glendaleca.gov/live, on the YouTube youtube.com/myglendale, and on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire devices using a free app called ScreenWeave and choosing Glendale TV from the menu. Meetings are also archived on the city's website for viewing anytime at www.glendaleca.gov/agendas. For public comments and questions during the meeting, please call 818-937-8100. City staff will be submitting the questions and comments in real time to the appropriate person. Current Design Review Board agendas are available by visiting our website at www.glendaleca.gov. Records of decisions for all projects will be posted online on the Planning Division's website. And please note that any appeal of a case heard today must be filed within 15 calendar days of the Design Review Board decision date. The appeal application is also available online. Roll call, Board Member Lockereff? Present?
Here, I'm present. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Minas is actually absent this evening. Board Member Chagayan?
Present.
Board Member Welch?
Here.
And Chair Simonian?
Present.
Okay, I'm going to request to take items out of order for the agenda because I would like to introduce our newest Design Review Board member, Danielle Lockereff, first. She is Council Member Dan Brotman's appointee. She's a senior associate and a project manager for Office 42 Architecture in Los Angeles. She has a degree in architecture from Cal Poly Pomona, has lived in Glendale 21 years, and is an active member of a wide variety of professional and community organizations. So we'd like to give a warm welcome to Danielle Lockereff.
Thank you. I'm really, really happy to be here and happy to be a part of this board. So thank you for the welcome.
Thank you. So next up, reports regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for the February 10th, 2022 regular meeting of the Glendale Design Review Board was posted on the city's website on January 3rd, 2022, and on the bulletin board outside City Hall on January 7th, 2022. Approval of minutes. There were two sets of minutes for approval. One actually was a set that we have already approved. And that was back on January 13th, and these would be the meeting minutes from December 9th, which leads only to one set of minutes, and those would be the ones from January 13th, 2022. And board members Minas, Simonian, Chagayan, and at that point, Chair Welch were present for that meeting. So are there any comments on those meeting minutes? And if so, or if not, is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve the minutes.
I have a motion by Board Member Welch. Is there a second?
Second.
Board Member Chagayan. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Welch?
Yes.
Board Member Chagayan?
Yes.
And Chair Simonian?
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0. Next up, oral communications. The discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. I'm checking the phone bank and there are no callers for oral communication. Which leads us next to any board or commission member comments. I see none. There are no items under old business. There are 3 items under new business. The first case on tonight's agenda is 1766 Cielito Drive. That case is actually being taken off calendar. Originally, it was going to be continued to the next Design Review Board meeting on February the 24th. However, that has been taken off calendar indefinitely, and it will be renoticed when it is being brought back before the board. So we have 2 cases remaining. And that would be for 1133 Park Avenue, case planner Dennis Joe, and then a multifamily residential project at 526 and 528 and 532 Hazel Street by Ms. Eileen Babakani. So
can I just jump in real quick on Cielito?
Yes.
Indefinitely sounds so forever. It's going to be brought back sooner than later. in case anyone in the public's listening, but it will be renoticed also to the community, so.
Thank you for that clarification, Jay. So, yes. Okay, so at this point, I'd either turn the meeting over to Chair Simonian or to Dennis Joe, our case planner for the Park Avenue project.
We'll start off with PDR 211-3589. And Mr. Joe, you want to start us off with staff's presentation?
Absolutely. Just give me a moment to get the PowerPoint started. Okay. Good evening, Chair and members of the board. The first item this evening is once again 1133 Park Avenue. Summary of the request at a very high level is to construct a 876 square foot, 2-story addition at the rear of an existing 1-story single-family residence. The project is generally located in the Adams Hill neighborhood. It's a contiguous lot, approximately 6,200 square feet, zone R3050. The topography is relatively flat. The abutting zones are R3050 to the east, west, south, and zone C1 to the north. This is an aerial view of the project site. Similar to the previous slide, the site is shaded in yellow at the center of the screen. Surrounding the properties are single and multifamily buildings along Park Avenue and commercial land uses along to the north along Chevy Chase. This slide contains photographs of the front and rear of the project site. The property is developed in 1939 with a 1-story, approximately 1,000 square foot single-family residence with a detached garage. As you can see from these photos, the house is a modest 1-story single-family dwelling designed in a mid-traditional style, finished with stucco, asphalt shingle roofs, and primarily around with recessed hung windows throughout the building. To demonstrate neighborhood context, these are Google Street spots. At the top is of the subject property, which consists of a 2-story multifamily dwelling to the west and a single family to the east. And to the south and across the street, which is the bottom photo, are single family residences with a 1- and 2-story profiles. Moving on to site planning. Shaded in blue is the 2-story volume, and shaded in purple is the 1-story volume. The two areas combined equal 876 square feet as noticed on the agenda. Overall, the project does not significantly alter the site planning of the lot. The addition is set back approximately 6 feet, 50 feet, and 32 feet from the western, northern, and eastern interior property lines, respectively. The applicant does not propose any additions to the front of the house. Landscaping of the front yard currently consists of limited vegetation. Existing are a mature ash tree, accent bushes, patches of grass, and compacted dirt. While the drawings do not indicate changes to the landscaping, staff recommends a condition of the front yard enhanced or re-landscaped with a greater variety of low or very low water use plants identified on WUCLs or bewaterwise.com. Moving on to the project's mass and scale, on this slide is the project's elevation. Beginning in the top left-hand corner is the street-facing elevation, and shaded in yellow is the project addition. And moving clockwise in the clockwise direction are the east, west, and the rear elevation, also shaded in yellow on each respective graphic. Overall, the massing concept of the project is appropriate for the site. The addition is located at the rear, behind the existing building, and is set back approximately 60 feet. As previously mentioned before, the subject property is a modest 1-story minimal traditional style building with hip roof. The addition features a tall shed roof as shown in the front elevation on the top left, which staff believes presents an awkward transition with the existing 1-story dwelling. It also creates a tall, massive wall facing the neighbor to the west, shown on the bottom right, which is the west elevation. The guidelines suggest that the roof configuration should reinforce the architectural idea and should be consistent with the overall design of the house. As a condition, As a condition, is recommended that the roof be redesigned with a simple hip roof with an 8-foot ceiling plate height to achieve consistency with. Moving on to finished material, the project will provide standard materials such as stucco, asphalt shingle, fascia. At the rear and outside the public view, shaded in yellow, the applicant is proposing green tile at these elevations to achieve a desired modern aesthetic. To provide textural and visual interest, staff is recommending that in lieu of stucco at the second level, an alternative material, such as horizontal siding, should be applied and wrap it all facades or terminate at a logical location to enhance overall design. And last, before I conclude staff's recommendation, a combination of vinyl or aluminum clad wood, flush nail-on, horizontal sliding and fix, which are circular in shape, and casement windows are provided throughout the addition. Similar to staff's recommendation regarding the project's roof, the windows throughout the addition too should coordinate better with the minimal traditional style. A condition is recommended that the woods throughout the addition should be recessed, either hung, casement, or fixed, with a rectangular sash with sills and trims to improve the overall design. Overall, staff recommends approval of this project with suggested conditions. One, that the roof above the addition should be designed with a hip roof with an 8-foot plate to reinforce the overall design and facilitate a better transition between the existing 1-story dwelling and the 2-story addition. And 2, the front yard is to be re-landscaped. The front yard landscape design should be enhanced with a greater variety of low or very low use plants identified on bewaterwise.com or WUCOLS. And 3, in lieu of stucco at the 2nd-story addition, alternative finished materials such as horizontal sidings should be incorporated into the design and terminate at a logical location to enhance the overall design. And a 4th condition, which was mentioned in the report and in this presentation, which was inadvertently omitted in the draft recommendations and the staff report, that the windows throughout the addition should be recessed, hung, casement, or fixed with a rectangular sash and sills to improve the overall design and match the minimal traditional aesthetic of the existing building. This concludes staff's presentation, and I am available for any questions.
Board members, do we have questions for staff? And I'm trying to get everyone on my screen. So if there is a board member that has a question.
No, I'm good.
I do have a
Yes,
question.
Miss Board Member Lockroff?
Yeah, I was wondering if you considered or spoke with the applicant about alternative roof options in addition to a hip roof. I just was wondering if you had explored other things.
We, as part of our regular application process, we do have a pre-application which we provide, and this is before we even submit. It's a free process, and we just kind of review the guidelines, and we just kind of offered some of our recommendations of a better transition. The applicant chose to move forward with their shed roof design, and here we are today. This could have been more of an administrative design review, but tonight they do want to make their case in point and just to talk about what the property owner's desires and their goals are with this property.
Just a very simple question is, in the current design, this is a question for the applicant. What is the thickness of the roof? It looked thin to me, and I just was curious I don't know if you have that offhand. It's probably unavailable at the minute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is AG. I'm the architect and representative for the homeowners. Well, we don't actually have structural on board yet because we wanted to get past this design review board determination first. But the intent would be to match the fascia on the existing house. And I don't have that off the top of my head, but I do think that I have it on my drawing somewhere on the elevations. At least the fascia line.
Okay, thank you.
that would match.
Okay.
So is it okay if I start to respond and address those comments?
Allow us one more moment. Are there any more questions at this point for staff from the board members? Board Member Chagayan?
Yes, I was just wondering if any other plan options were explored, like a single-story version, or was it always a two-story addition?
We landed on a two-story.
For a moment, from the applicant's point of view, the public session has not started yet.
Okay.
And so at this point, the board members are asking specific questions to staff. So please don't respond just yet. Staff will answer questions. Then I'm going to open up the public portion. Then you will have a chance to present. And then the public will have a chance to chime in by phone calls. Then you will have a rebuttal period. Then I will close the public portion and then we'll start deliberation. So with that, allow staff to please answer board member questions. Thank you. Go ahead.
So overall, you know, staff did provide their concerns, you know, just as far as comments with the guidelines, and we do always encourage, you know, alternatives so that we can soften and maybe bring this to a lower level of design review. And that's kind of staff's goal. But yes, as the AG, the applicant, will go into further, just to make the case for the property owners. I think they feel strong about their design and their goals for the property, as mentioned before. So I think this is something, and not to put words in their mouth, but I think this is something they feel that's very strong that they would like to move forward with.
Board members, are there any other questions for staff at this point? No. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open the public portion. I assume the applicant that was speaking is going to represent. And so please state your name for the record and start presenting the project and what you would like to share with us. Thank you.
Sure. My name is A.G. Rue again, and I'm the architect. Should I respond to the question about the plan studies or move forward into what we've prepared?
You could use this opportunity to present, and if you feel as though that is where you want to start, then please start at that point.
Okay, well, just to respond to that quickly, because of the narrow lot and the setback requirements, we just felt that we were basically didn't have many options except to do this extruded second-story box in order to gain the space that they needed at the backyard, as well as the additional space that they needed at the interior. So we did land on that second story instead of maybe a longer single story, if that was potentially the suggestion that was going to come out. But we did consider the hipped roof when Dennis first mentioned this to us, but we actually felt that it was more prominent and became almost like a tower element when we brought the roof to a pitch at the center. Dennis, if you wouldn't mind pulling up that supplemental PDF.
Absolutely. Let me just share my screen here.
Okay. So as he mentioned, we have a second story neighbor on the left and then a single story neighbor on the right. So we actually felt that if you go to the second page, that the shed roof would follow the existing pitch of the existing home on this lot, as well as kind of modulate between the second story neighbor down to the first. And if you go to the final page of this, it shows what that's doing in 3D. So when we studied this, the hipped roof in 3D, I should have actually drawn a little diagram on top of this too, but it actually, like I was trying to say, brought the pitch to the center and it became more of like a tower element. We feel that this, with the high point being offset towards the second story taller neighbor, actually helps to obscure the shape a bit more from the street. And then just going back a bit in terms of giving some background on this design, as Dennis mentioned, it is a minimal traditional style, and we do want to respect and incorporate elements from the existing single family home into the addition. But we also wanted to make it feel a bit different and more unique, since we don't really have the option in plan to set back the volume and modulate the volume in areas. We really wanted to do that with material. We wanted to just embrace the simple modern box, and then have it complement the single family home with materials and use similar stucco and also asphalt shingle roofing. But we also considered trying to incorporate siding, but there wasn't a natural place to terminate it, since it is a straight extruded box. We felt that the material on the addition should be monolithic and should be consistent over the entire volume. We also did price it out as an option, and just due to budget, it wasn't really a feasibility based on the material selections that we were looking at. The last item that Dennis had mentioned, I think we hadn't spoken about the front yard landscaping before, but I think that's something that we could happily do. The last item that we had discussed were the windows. And you can see that we did incorporate the same detailing of the windows at the front house, at anything that's street facing. But we did feel like we wanted to embrace that more modern, clean detailing at the rear and side of the addition, where it was less visible from the street.
Thank you. Board members, do we have additional questions for the applicant? Board member Walsh?
Yeah, could you tell me, so you said you're incorporating elements from the existing design. What elements do you believe you've incorporated from the current existing design into this new addition?
We're still using stucco. It'll be a different color, but we'll still be using stucco. And I mean, there aren't that many elements, as you can see, in the existing house to begin with, but the roof massing, the shape and pitch of the shed roof will match the existing pitch of the current single family home, as well as match in material. And we'll incorporate the fascia detailing from the existing family home as well. Also, in terms of color, the darker trim paint colors will also bring that into the addition. But like I said, there isn't that much to draw from to begin with, because of the fact that it is a minimal traditional home. And we want to emphasize that a bit more in the addition.
Did you consider making any modifications to the current facade to perhaps bring about some greater consistency between the two design languages, between the addition and the current existing design?
We actually didn't know that that was an option. I mean, I guess it is something that we could have considered, but also because of budget, we're trying to minimize the scope of work to the rear. But I think that is something that we could consider if you had some thoughts in mind.
Board member Chagayan?
Could you describe a little bit more what the intent of introducing that tile that wraps the rear and a little bit of the side elevation, when I heard you say that the two-story volume, you wanted to have a monolithic look?
That was a way for us to try to modulate the massing a bit since we couldn't do it from the sides because we need to maximize footprint. We were able to do it at the rear, and it's actually allowing for an overhang and setback area where there can be an outdoor shower. So we did make an attempt to incorporate a different material there. And that was the tile, which we would need at an outdoor, I mean, it would be nice to have it at an outdoor shower anyway. We could consider incorporating siding there instead, potentially.
Other questions for the applicant? So, Ms. Zimidaitis, do we have any callers that are waiting to talk about this project? No callers. Since there were no callers, there's really no need for a rebuttal, I assume, unless you have anything else to share with us.
I think we did want to say that we were inspired by the design guidelines, saying that they encouraged originality, creativity, and diversity, and recommends avoiding monotony. And we actually thought that of all the diverse styles in the neighborhood, that modern was less represented. Sorry. So we would, even though we're not doing something overtly contemporary and we're still respecting the existing single family homes more traditional style, we would like to ask that you consider something that is more modestly modern in detailing.
Thank you. With that, we'll go ahead and close the public portion and we'll start our deliberation. Who would like to go first? Board Member Chagayan, do you want to start us off on this one?
Sure. I mean, so this is definitely a unique one, I would say, that has been presented to us. I don't necessarily mind the modern aspect of it, but there is something that I think is not 100% working with when you look at, particularly from that west elevation, and then from the street view that you get, sort of just this pop-up addition up on the second story. I also don't believe the hip roof is the direction to go with because of the slenderness of the addition. I'm wondering if maybe a consideration would be possibly clipping the corner that you see that's so visible from the street side, in order to sort of blend better with the traditional hip roof architecture that's happening with the single family home. That diagram you shared, which showed, because I drive by all the properties, and that two-story complex that's right next door, I think is helping you in this case to allow to build a two-story addition, and it's way at the rear, but that diagram you showed really helps me see at least where your two-story addition lands relative to that building, since there were no story poles as I was driving past, since it's not a single family zone. So I would strongly suggest possibly clipping that angle that's facing the street. And then I'm all for a modern design, but of course our guidelines are written so that it's complementary and blending. And I see your point about introducing some originality and creativity. I think I am in agreement with introducing more texture or the horizontal siding, particularly that west elevation is we normally ask applicants to try and step back and create some of those interest and volumes, but you really don't have much you can do with the slenderness of this addition and the site. I mean, the reason I asked about the single-story options is realizing you have that garage right there. I think the only way you could get away with a single-story addition is if you were to attach to, and that is something that could have been, I guess, possible. But if I mean, I understand when you're strong about your design concept that you're presenting to us. So I would say I'm in agreement with all of staff's recommendations, with the exception of the hip roof on the addition. I don't believe that's going to help the design, because you can't really force it to fit the single family home, not the way it's currently planned and laid out. And I think those are my thoughts. Yep, I think that covers it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We seem to have lost Chair Simonian from his internet feed. So if there's no objection, I will go ahead and chime in with my comments. I largely concur with Board Member Chagayan. The goal of the design guidelines, and from me personally, is I want to see something that is true to itself. That is a holistic design, and this looks like two things that are just mashed together, and there's not sufficient effort to try to really bring them together. I made mention of where you tried to bring in design elements from the existing design, and there are opportunities there. The corner window features, or possibly, if you really like this motif of these circular windows, potentially trying to add a circular window element to the front facade of the building, which would then help tie it in. I like Board Member Chagayan's suggestion of clipping that corner in lieu of doing a hip roof. I agree it is a fairly narrow building, but I don't think that a hip roof would be objectionable either. I think it would certainly help blend the design in better, even if you just did a hip at the front portion facing the street, and then allowed the shed to rise up towards the rear. Because I do think, frankly, the best elevation on the design is that rear one. I think that looks nice. I think that it is much more well considered, and I think that if a little bit more of that, was brought into the side elevations, particularly the west elevation, which is just a big blank wall of gray stucco, that's not in keeping with the design guidelines at all. So I think that's Mr. Joe's suggestions of making some changes there with materials is appropriate. I would concur with I guess I'll call them all four conditions that Mr. Joe put forward, because there was a fourth one that related to the windows as well, if I was understanding his presentation correctly. So yes, I'm seeing him nodding. So yes. So generally speaking, I'm in favor of that. I think that's there's ways that if you work with staff, you can bring about some more holistic elements to this, so that it doesn't look like it's two things just mashed together, and it becomes a much more coordinated and integrated design, in my opinion. Have we got Board Member Chagayan, Board Member Simonian back yet? It does not look like it. Okay, so I'll stand in loco parentis here for Board Member Chair Simonian. So yes, Billy.
Yes, Board Member Welch. There he is.
There he is.
Okay.
All right, he's back.
Suggest a recess till the chair returns, but perfect. Okay, great. We can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
I apologize. As I said, we were having internet issues. It went blank, and now I'm back on. So apologize about that.
Great, thank you, thank you. We've heard from Board Members Chagayan and Welch, and I
Well,
believe.
then,
Board
Board Member Lacroix, if you want to start us off with your thoughts as well, or end with your thoughts as well.
Yes, I wanted to start by saying that I think it's a modest proposal. It's going to improve the character of the neighborhood. I do agree with the designer that the diversity is important. And I think the design is very creative and I love that. And I also agree with my fellow board members that it would be nice if you could find a way to integrate it more with the existing home. And I love the idea of bringing a circular window to the downstairs or something to that effect. When I did drive by, I did have some concerns about the height of that wall for the neighbor, that on the two-story neighbor. And so I like the idea of either clipping the roof or even considering the slope going in the other direction. But I think a hip roof might look odd on that narrow building. So I do agree that an alternative solution, and maybe staff can make a recommendation of, setting the height at 8 feet for the top plate or something like that, but then give the designer the creativity on how to achieve that. I think that would be a great solution. Yeah, no, I really like the design. I think, again, finding ways to bring materials from the bottom up, it would be great, and articulating the facade a little bit more. Trying to think of any other. Also, I feel that west elevation is a little abrupt, and I have some concerns about the reality of the roof, the hip roof sloping down into the wall, and you're really going to need a cricket or something there, and valley flashing, and it might look even more unattractive once you add all those things. And so I think I would love to see the designer consider a way to tie the roof of the existing home into the addition in a more seamless manner. I think that's about it. And I love the round window. So if you can bring it down below, or maybe staff's condition could include the ability to incorporate elements from the addition into the new, the existing building. I think that would make it more seamless. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And as I was cut off for a moment, I missed Board Member Welch's thoughts. I'm wondering if Board Member Welch, if you could recap very quickly kind of your thoughts, just so I could holistically get a sense as to all the board members' comments.
Certainly. I was largely concurring with Board Members Chagayan's comments that preceded mine, and that I felt that the design was not well enough integrated into the existing design of the home. I think that there needed to be some more elements to tie these together, whether it's colors, shapes of windows, forms that brings about a more holistic sense of design. Right now, it appears to me to be two things just joined at the hip and not really fully integrated. So generally speaking, I did support Mr. Joe's conditions to try and soften it up. I'm open to suggestions or the comments about the roof forms, because I too concur that that's while the hip roof form does respect the current design, it is a little awkward there, considering the long, narrow form of that second story addition. I think that's about it. Oh, and I complimented them on the rear facade, because I thought that was the best executed of all of the elevations. And it looks really very nice to me. And because of the breaking up of the second story from the first story with those tiles, I think it brings about a more interesting design, which just to me didn't carry through with the other elevations, particularly the west elevation, that big blank wall of stucco. So.
Thank you so much, Board Member Welch, for going over your comments twice. I appreciate it. I overall agree with staff's comments as well, and their conditions. I see the applicant's point of view. I appreciate their approach. However, I do think that there is some improvements that could be done if the idea is to really kind of create a very unique box in the rear. So in other words, if you have a very traditional front home and you decide to create a very unique modern addition, then you really go that extra length and have that kind of steel and glass in the rear, let's say, that is completely differentiating itself than the, let's say, traditional structure in the front. However, that's not occurring. It's not going in that direction, and so they're kind of similar, but in so they are very wildly different with those straight, unarticulated two-story stucco walls, which this board has always had an issue with. I concur with staff's conditions. I think they're all good. I do also agree with some of the comments that have been made about the rear facade having some unique features and breaking up that mass. But in general, I would support the project with staff's conditions. So with that, Mr. Platt, do you have enough to start formulating some conditions for us?
I do, and then we heard a few variations on themes that maybe we could get a little more clarity on. So I'll just kind of run down what I heard. And as a broad comment, I think there was consensus that there needed to be some more tying together of the two parts of the house. And that could be by incorporating more modernizing elements toward the front house, which could be done through materials. There was mention of possibly bringing a circular window there, which could be fun if there was also a circular window on the street facade of the second story addition, which I think I saw the owners smiling at that idea. I wasn't sure if I caught that right. So, okay, there's consensus on the owner's part. There was, there was I think, general consensus that the rear elevation is best. And I think part of that reason is that there is additional material there with the tile as well as the circular window and kind of a balance. There was general consensus that the hipped roof recommendation wasn't quite the right way to go. Just to give clarity for where staff was coming from, that west wall facing the neighbor is so tall and massive compared to what the board usually approves that we kind of thought, how can we remedy that? And I think it was Commissioner or Board Member Lockeroff maybe who's talked about flipping the roof pit, the shed from one side to the other, which I think would open up wonderful opportunities. If I were laying in bed and had nice clear story windows facing west with sunset cloud views and just an opportunity might arise there, because a lot of the tall part of the ceiling is going to be over the closet and the bathroom where you don't really need it so much. So that could be a direction to address that. We also heard about the idea of perhaps taking the shed and clipping the end of it just to give a little ridge line that would tie it together with the house. So those are 2 points that I didn't get complete clarity on. In general, there was talking about bringing additional materials in. I didn't hear a lot of definite interest in it necessarily being horizontal siding. That was just one of the ideas. So you could give us clarity whether you like the tile, and is there a way to maybe bring that up at a corner or do something with that that would be kind of interesting and keeping with the designer's modern kind of instincts that would still tie it in. Let's see. I think that was generally what I have. So unless I missed something, let me know, please. And then I guess the points of clarity we need are if you have more specific guidance for window placement, material placement and type, and then how to resolve the roof issue.
All right, so board members, are there any thoughts to provide specific feedback to help staff formulate more precise conditions?
Not sure that I can give anything specific. Yeah,
I saw board member Lockeroff
Okay,
raise her hand, I believe, first.
I was thinking just in regards to the roof pitch specifically, that if you set a maximum top plate and then give the designer the creativity on how they would resolve that, that could be a good way to define that. guideline. So for instance, set it at 8 feet or something that is not a bad situation for the neighbors, for instance, so they get enough light and air. So I think if you set it low enough at 8 feet, then they could either slope it the other direction or clip it to get down to 8 feet. That was an idea.
Board Member Welsh?
Yeah, I don't necessarily want to be very prescriptive on this. I think that the general consensus is that the west wall with that large stucco area is a problem, and that if we could solve that with some different forms of the roof, including the notion of just flipping the direction of the shed, I think that might actually be okay. I'm not opposed to that, and I think that we can give some direction that if they can correct for the issue of the massive stucco that is made by that western wall by some other alterations to the roof form, including reversing the shed and allowing a different articulation of windows on that. I guess that would be the east-facing side, facing into the yard and towards the garage. I think that would be reasonable enough for us to do, and ask staff to work out with the applicant.
Mr. Platt, does that provide enough feedback?
Yeah, definitely. And it looks like we're working with a creative team that will come up with really interesting ideas. So that's good.
So with that, do we have a motion by a board member?
I'll move it.
I second.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve with the outline conditions. This will be roll call. Board Member Lekaroff,
Yes.
Board Member Chagayan,
Yes.
Board Member Welsh,
Yes.
Mr. Chair Simonian.
Yes.
Motion stands 4-0.
Thank you. With that, we are going to move on to the next case, PDR 211-6686. And Ms. Babakani is the case planner. Ms. Babakani, are you ready to start off with staff's presentation?
Yes, I am.
So with that, we're going to say goodbye to the first applicants, and we'll start off with the second case, Ms. Babakani.
Thank you, Chair Simonian, and good evening, everyone. I'm going to share the screen for my PowerPoint presentation, go over the project. Tonight, design review case before you is a design review application with case number PDR 2116686 for proposed development located at 526, 528, and 532 Hazel Street. Project site is approximately 20,330 square feet located on the south of Hazel Street and containing of 3 adjoining lots with relatively flat topography. The existing one-story residential dwelling and a detached garage located at 526 Hazel Street and 2 one-story residential dwellings and a detached garage located at 528 Hazel Street are proposed to be demolished. 532 Hazel is a vacant lot. The existing structure and buildings on the project site do not appear to meet any criteria for designation on the local, state, or national level, and therefore they're not considered historic resources under CEQA. The project is to construct a new 3-story, 23,134 square foot, 17-unit multifamily residential building with 2 affordable units restricted to very low-income households, with a one-level subterranean parking garage to locate 38 parking spaces. The project is zoned R2250, which stands for medium density residential zone. And the project is exempt from CEQA under Class 32 infill development. And also in August 31, 2021, the project was approved by Director of Community Development Department for density bonus for 2 affordable units. And for that case, there were 2 approved concessions for increased floor area and also for increased lot coverage. Basically, the floor area of this project exceeds almost 5,000 square feet over the allowed FAR, and also the lot coverage of this project exceed approximately 3,500 square feet over what is allowed. In terms of the site planning, the project site is located in a neighborhood consists of single-family and multi-family residential buildings. The site planning appears to be appropriate to the site and its surrounding properties. The project meets street, front, and interior setbacks. Also, the project meets zoning requirements for outdoor common open space, the size for the additional open space, and also these spaces are well integrated into the site planning, which the area of the interior courtyard, open space at the side and rear of the building, and second floor roof decks are designated for the required outdoor open space for this project with access to all units. And the building's one-level subterranean garage will have a driveway access from Hazel Street, and the provided parking spaces meet Glendale Municipal Code Chapter 30.36 in compliance with the parking ratios for density bonus projects. The circulation element identifies Hazel Street as local street. This type of streets are fully developed and can adequately handle the traffic circulation around the site. Also, the city's traffic engineer reviewed the project and determined that no significant increase in traffic would occur as a result of this project, because the project won't basically generate a significant increase in the number of vehicle trips to and from the site. For the parking garage design, the project appropriately provides pedestrian access by elevator and also staircase from the interior courtyard, as well as from the front and 2 rear corners of the building. To the landscape plan. Landscape plan is complementary to the building design and includes drought-tolerant landscaping. Urban Forestry also reviewed the project and supported the removal of one of the 3 existing street tree because basically there is no suitable location to plant a new street tree due to the large canopy of the existing trees and also the proposed location of the driveway. However, City Forestry will require certain conditions for protection of the remaining street trees. That's why staff added a condition of approval to address forestry requirements. The project appropriately provides for the 2-inch high perimeter fencing with aluminum railing material along the side and rear property lines, with tall landscaping in front of the fence to minimize its visibility and also to provide privacy buffers to adjacent buildings. The rooftop equipment for this project, the location of trash bins also are out of public view, internal and external downspout are appropriate to the overall design. The proposed plans show the appropriate location of light fixture at the front facade. Also, the project will have recessed ceiling lighting for the balconies. So since this design provides articulation on the facade, and the design basically is a combination of 2-story volumes at the front and 3-story volumes at the rear, staff believes the project mass and scale are appropriate to the surrounding development pattern and fit within the neighborhood. Also, the project large setbacks, location of entries and opening, and the use of different type of exterior wall finishes help the building mass and scale not to have overwhelming appearance. This proposed building will have overall height of 35 feet and 9 inches, which is lower than the maximum height limit of 36 feet in this zone. The design features flat form roof appropriate to the overall design. The flat roof with parapets and roof decks appropriately reinforce the proposed design concept of the contemporary architectural style. In terms of the design and details, staff believes the proposed architectural details, colors, and combination of materials, including smooth stucco finish, stone veneer, horizontal siding for the balconies, aluminum railings, and garage door, aluminum windows also reinforce the proposed architectural style and are consistent with the neighborhood context of various architectural styles. The location of the primary entryway, which features a green wall terrace, is also well designed and integrated into the overall design. Windows for this project will be, as I mentioned, aluminum. There will be recessed within the wall without seal or exterior frame, and they will have a combination of casement, fixed, and sliding windows, again, compatible with the proposed architectural style. Here you can see some details of the proposed materials and colors in this slide. And the driveway and walkways will have decorative paving, again, appropriate to the design concept. Staff recommends approval of this project with one condition that I mentioned: to obtain required city urban forestry approval for street tree prior to building permit issuance. And before I conclude my presentation, I want to mention that staff received 4 public comments in the form of emails. Some comments asking basically questions about the approval process. Some comments came with concern about the traffic impact, the size of the building, the height of the building, the construction activities, and privacy impact to the neighboring properties. Staff received comments from Alex Isaac Edelman, Maria Victoria Mauricio, Liha Palma Falecha, and Andres Arzeta Engels. This concludes my presentation, and staff is available for your question.
Questions for staff at this point? For Lockhart?
Hello. I have a few questions. Well, I guess this might be more for the applicant, but did the project have any solar as a part of this design?
We do have, by code, we have to have some solar paneling on top of the roof.
Again, we're going to start off with questions from
Oh, sorry.
board members
No,
to.
that was my fault. Sorry about
We're going to staff. Staff, can we just remember, we're going to start off with staff and then we'll move on to the applicant. Let's go ahead.
The project drawings are showing the location of solar panels on the roof, and that would be under separate permit. But the answer would be yes, this project is going to provide solar panel.
Any other questions? Board Member Welsh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Babakani, so it certainly was something I observed that the third floor open spaces that are provided are listed as common open space, but it's clear that they also have big wide doors and sliding doors from certain of the units that open onto some of those, which I mean, for all practical purposes, will probably end up becoming private open space. So the question to me is, if those were listed as private open space instead of common, would the project still meet all of the required conditions for providing open space?
Board Member Welch, are you asking about the common open space proposed at the rooftop?
Yes, there's 3 of them on the roof. There's 4 on the rooftop. One of them does not immediately open into one of the units, but the other 3, all of them have direct openings from the units, from their living rooms, with big, wide sliding doors that open right onto the public open space.
So I can say with elimination of this area at the rooftop decks as part of the common open space, the project won't meet the requirement for the size of the required common open space for this project.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, any other questions for staff? I had a question. Ms. Babakani, you mentioned that there were 2 concessions for FAR and lot coverage. Were there any waivers as well that were requested on this project?
Chair Simonian, there wasn't any waiver.
In regards to the additional common open space, one of the diagrams indicated that the additional common open space was kind of placed in the center courtyard. Isn't that typically more placed in the front versus in the middle in regards to kind of the street frontage?
So if I can answer the question, there isn't too much space at the front of the building to locate the open space, outdoor open space, because outdoor open space can't be located within the street front setback. Therefore, I think the designer decided to use the interior courtyard, which I believe has enough width and area for being used as an additional open space for this project. However, the area that is proposed for the additional open space is more than what is required for this project.
Because I noticed that on sheet 1.3 that it's the purple private additional open space is actually U-shaped, and in some areas it's less than 10 feet wide.
Yeah, that's I also noticed that when I was reviewing this project in details, but at the same time, I noticed that the requirement for the additional open space is only 1,500 square feet for this project. Whatever is proposed as a provided additional open space based on the architect calculation is 2,048 square feet. And I think this is something that we can deal during the plan check to make sure all the area of this additional open space in terms of the size and location are in compliance with the zoning code.
In regards to the common open space and the landscape percentage, all the landscaping on the upper level deck is counting towards the 25% landscaping as well on this project?
This is what is shown on the drawing, yes. And that can be part, like we can consider the landscaping and within the common open space part of the landscape percentage for the multifamily projects.
So, board members, just before we open it up and have the applicant speak, do we have any more questions for staff? No. So with that, we'll go ahead and open the public portion. Ms. Ryan, Mr. Ryan, are you going to represent the client?
Yes.
If you would state your name for the record and go ahead and start us off.
Bahram Rahim. Sorry, I couldn't hear.
Welcome. Go ahead. You could start.
This project is contemporary, and we went by 17 units as permitted, 2 units of extremely low income. There are 2 bedrooms matching the area. We are trying to improve the area by building this, and hopefully it's going to be followed by the other neighbors to improve the area. And I don't know what else I could say, but the setbacks, as much as we could, we are over the setback requirements. We went over the open space, and so we can have something very friendly and comfortable apartment building.
Was that it? Was that the entire presentation? Any?
Yes.
Okay. Board members, do we have questions for the applicant? Board member Walsh?
Yeah, I was wondering if you had explored other options for stairway access into the garage, because right now it seems like the stairway access is limited to just right at the periphery, which don't really lend themselves well to actually using them to access the building itself. You'd literally be forced to use the elevator. Otherwise, it would be a very long, circuitous pathway around the building in order to gain access from the garage.
No, we have an entrance to the building. And usually the tenants goes with the elevator down to the basement for the parking. And mostly what I see in that 40 years, they don't use staircases to go in. Usually they use the elevator.
Well, I had a question, Mr. Rahim. In regards to your south facade and also your north facade, it seems as though you have these blank kind of walls. You have siding and then, of course, in the middle, stucco. But have you considered breaking up the mass there and trying to create more undulation on those facades? And was that explored?
The middle portion is set back.
Yes, but I'm just talking about the
I can have
two-story
some elements-
solid
I
building.
can have some elements in between to have some more, yeah, we can do that. And make some changes for those 2 portions on the left and the right, so they can be more attractive.
But when we look at the rendering well, it's the last page of your architectural package. It depicts kind of this very blank walls on the side. And so I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, we can just put some features on it and make it more attractive.
What is that material on the south side? So in other words, the material that wraps around the corner, you have the bamboo siding in the front, but then you have another material that's at the corner, turns the corner when we're looking at the rendering. What is that material?
Porcelain tile?
It's a porcelain tile like this. Let me bring them. the elevation. Okay, yeah, those are porcelain tile.
I see. Okay. All right. Since we don't have any other questions for, oh, yes, Board Member Lockroff?
Yeah, I do. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Yeah, I was to kind of continue my question regarding the solar. I was wondering, can you describe what kind of backup battery are you guys maximizing that? I guess I know that we can't require you to do that, but it would be amazing to if you could get maximum capacity as we're you know, so that there are less outages and things like that.
Okay, the capacity of the solar panels went from 285 watt to 400. So
Right.
the areas that you're showing is going to be almost 30% more solar capacity than what it was probably a year ago or 2 years ago. By the time we're building it, it might gonna go up because I know Tesla is making a solar of 1 kilowatt an hour. So
Right.
if something like that comes, then we can change it to that one before we install it and make it a better solar system on the building.
Wonderful. And also just along those lines, how many EV chargers do you have? I think most cars are going in that direction. Again, I know this isn't our purview, but it would be a recommendation. So
Let me look at the plan. I don't. The EV. It hasn't been marked on the plan. No, we can just tell us how many units we can put the EV on the.
I know that by code, but just encouraging you to do as many as you
I know,
can.
because right
So,
now all the cars
yeah.
are becoming electric, probably by 5 or 10 years. So that's
Right.
why we have we can increase the capacity of our transformer, and we can install more EVs.
Thank you.
Why the code doesn't-
Thank you. Oh, one last thing. The stucco finish, I apologize if I missed this on the plans, but what texture were you planning on using? One of the renderings looked extremely textured, and I just wanted to check in on.
No, it's
what
not
finish.
texture. No. It just
Okay.
shows the color, different colors. on the
Okay.
stucco, but it's not texture, no.
Okay, so like a 20, 30 cent
Yes,
finish.
it's the trowel finish. Trowel finish is smooth finish.
Okay, thank you.
The HVAC condensers that are on the roof, is there going to be screening around that? Because when I'm looking at the rendering on the last page, it seems as though there's no screening around that. And then how are you going to control the noise from the condensers to the common open spaces?
On sheet just A6, it shows the screen with the plate on top of it. So it's going to be the wrought iron plus sheet metal on top of it. Hopefully the sheet metal is going to get some of the noise not to go toward the neighbor.
And so it's a solid sheet metal cover?
Solid sheet metal, yes.
I see. And then how do you allow the unit to breathe, I guess, if it's solid or, well, it's around it and top of it too, or just around it?
Just surround it.
All right. Yes, Board Member Chagayan.
Yes, during the presentation, I noticed the garage door, which I guess I hadn't noticed previously, but is that a solid garage door being planned?
No, it's open.
It's open, but it's roll up?
It's a roll up, yes.
Do we have any more questions for the applicant? Ms. Simonidis, do we have any callers on this project? Yes.
Yes, we do. We have, at this point, 3 callers. The first caller is Amelia Bartholomew. Amelia
Hi.
Bartholomew, you're live on the air with the Design Review Board.
Hi there. I would just, before I ask some questions, would like to make a few comments. In the presentation, it was noted that this would improve the neighborhood and change it. As somebody who lives in this neighborhood, I would like to note that it's in no way dangerous. There would be no need to improve it for safety reasons, but I also wanted to note that in the mock-ups of this potential building, I believe it's kind of disingenuous to the profile of the neighborhood. The whole block is almost exclusively single-story, single-family homes. And watching the other presentations, I saw there was a lot of attention put on how a two-story building would affect the way the neighborhood looks. This would be the only three-story building in the whole block. It would be like a monolith. And I want to know why a three-story building was chosen in this spot specifically. I recognize that it, creates more living spaces, but it truly it would be the only one of its kind. I would also like to know the privacy measures for the buildings directly next to it. I heard mention of some walls that were going to be put in place. I didn't see them, but you're going to be building potentially windows looking directly into other people's windows, and I wanted to know if there was going to be any greenery that was put in to sort of protect the privacy. And then I also wanted to ask how rent would be expected to change in this neighborhood. But I think those are all the questions I have.
Thank you. Do you have any other additional comments?
Not particularly, except that I think the comment of beginning to change the neighborhood is exclusive to profit. I don't think any sort of quality of living would be improved with this building. And that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We'll take those into consideration, and the applicant may address some of your comments during the rebuttal period. Do we have another caller?
Yes, we do. Next caller, Rena Thomas. Rena Thomas, you're live on the air with the Design Review Board.
Yes. My family has owned a home on 612 Hazel Street now for 25 years. And it's been a very quiet, quaint, safe neighborhood. And there's two things that concerns me. One is parking. It's a very narrow street. It's so narrow that you have to yield or not go on the street when you see another car coming by. So I'm concerned about the quantity of units. More people living on that street and more traffic. And then also the size of the building. I agree with the lady who just spoke right before me. Most of the houses are single family, homes. Maybe there's been some add-ons, but maybe 2 stories, like little townhomes, which looks nice. So I am concerned about the size. And I was reading that I guess they will have 34 spots for parking. But what about when, the families there have company? Where are they going to park? Because right now, even with the residents right now, sometimes they might even park a little bit into your driveway because there's not enough room. So those are my concerns. I know the building looks beautiful. I just, I was looking at it, but I'm concerned with the traffic, with parking, and just the size of the building. Why not a smaller size of building? And for the privacy of the other neighbors too, they're going to be looking right down at them. So that's my concern. But I got to tell you that it's been a very quiet, very safe neighborhood for us for many, many years.
Thank you.
And that's it.
Do we have any other callers?
There are a few other callers. So. James Roncall. James, you're live on the air with the Design Review Board.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, hello, Review Board. My name is James Roncall, and I own a property. Well, I've owned the property on 620 Hazel, which is on the same block on the same side of that street for the past 23 years. And you know, I agree. Like, to turn 3 spaces into 17 is what we need, and I do like the setback of how it went, of how the front is set back from the street. So my concern would be the lady before about the parking, that there is no parking on that street, and yes, there's enough parking for the tenants, but visitors, you know, they would of course have visitors, and that's probably going to be an impact us that live on that street. And then there was it's a quiet street, very quaint, and I've been to other apartment buildings that have rooftop decks, and the parties and gatherings that people have on the rooftop decks carry very far away from the building to the surrounding neighborhood. So I was wondering if that's any way, you know, maybe glass sound walls or quiet hours or something that would address that concern. And I was just curious about that sidewalk in front. Our street does not have any sidewalks, so that sidewalk in front of that building would be sidewalk to nowhere. But anyway, but my concern would be the parking and the possible sound incursion from the rooftop decks. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Next speaker is Andre Arzati. Andre Arzati, you're live on the air.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. Appreciate you guys having this for the neighborhood to be able to kind of voice their opinion. I did want to echo what most of the people have said here so far, which is that, you know, I think the neighborhood, first of all, is a very safe neighborhood. If you go on crimemapping.com, you can see, like, relative to the rest of, you know, Glendale and the Burbank area, it's actually very safe and doesn't have nearly as much activity as other areas. So I think that is something to note as well, too. The size is also a concern for me, too. At 3 stories, that is completely out of place in this neighborhood. There's nothing that tall right now except for the Disney building that's, you know, specifically for like 4,000 employees down the street. So it will look very out of place. It's going to have, you know, residents there at that new facility. They could look down onto others, and just, you know, I think considering the appeal of this neighborhood is the quaintness and the nice aesthetics it already has, and while the building is nice looking, that's proposed, you know, for the neighbors around, that's going to just be very different and out of place, and not very pleasant to have that kind of looking down on you. And then as well as what the other people mentioned as well too, with that many more residents being in that area, the streets are very narrow as it is. I live actually on the Davis side, kind of right behind this proposed project, and we get a lot of traffic on both sides, Hazel and Davis, from people going each way, and there's not a lot of space. So with that many more, it's going to be, you know, it could make it dangerous, especially for the little kids around the neighborhood too, with no sidewalks as it is as well too, as the other caller mentioned. So I just wanted to make sure that, you know, it doesn't seem like that kind of thing has been considered in what I've been hearing, mostly just about the additional residential area you're talking about. So I want to make sure it's safe for the neighbors, and it doesn't seem like that's necessarily at the forefront of this project. So.
Thank you for taking the time to call in. Do we have any other speakers?
No more callers.
Okay. And before we go to the applicant for a rebuttal, I wanted to just take a moment and address some of the thoughts that were shared by the folks that called in. This is a density bonus project, and so there are certain laws that were passed with the state of California that basically dictate a certain amount of density bonus for these sort of properties. And the applicant has a state right to ask for certain height concessions or certain FAR concessions or lot coverage concessions, etc. In this case, this is a wide lot. By regular City of Glendale codes, it could allow for a 3-story building. Utilizing state codes and state given rights, the applicant could have gone for a 4-story, but they didn't. And so I just wanted to bring that up so the public kind of understands that in regards to density bonus projects, this one is moderate because it doesn't ask for that additional story. In regards to parking, state is very strict on the amount of parking that's required for these sort of projects. The state required code for this number of parking spots for this project would have been 26. However, this project is providing 38 from what I'm gathering from the staff report. And so that's another point for kind of the public to realize is voluntarily the applicant is providing more parking, which of course it will help the project and it's will become more feasible and more leasable, but at the same time, it'll also alleviate parking congestion with the surrounding neighborhood. Sidewalk was mentioned, and from what I gather from the drawings, new sidewalk will be placed along the right of way. So applicant with its own funds will improve the right of way, sidewalk, plant street trees per urban forestry comments, etc. And so I just wanted to bring these points up so the callers that took the time to call in, and I know it's not easy to, call in after work and stick around for hours, but I wanted to kind of bring those things up to your attention. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to the applicant. You do have a rebuttal period, but please try to keep it within 3 minutes if you can, addressing some specific questions that came up or other thoughts that you may have, and then we'll close the public portion and then we'll go to deliberation. Thank you, Mr. Raid.
Yes. For the height, on my design, I try to set back around 30 feet extra than the setback of the actual setback. So from the street, you will see only 2-story. And from the side yards also, I set back a little more, and it's only 3 units up there. And I try to be somehow hiding these units from the view of the, from street view. For the parking, we provided 2 parking for each unit plus 4 guest parking. So if they have someone over there that they want to visit them, they have 4 parking. And if we rented a place, they rented the place to a person with the 1 car, then there's another extra parking for the guests. So, and as you said, we provided 38 parking extra than what it should be. And I believe the traffic study that the city done, it's not going to increase that much of the traffic to the place. Thank you.
Go ahead and close the public portion. If any of the board members have questions for the applicant or staff, we'll go ahead and open it up again. But in the meantime, Mr. Ryan, just please try to refrain from cross conversation with us. And if necessary, we'll chime you in. Board Member Welsh, do you want to start us off on this one?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, let me first of all echo your comments that you had made to the public. I was going to chime in on that as well, because we really don't have a lot of latitude here when it comes to things like the density bonus and what concessions are provided. And so I think that the applicant really does deserve a lot of credit for having been modest with what he's proposed here. I think the design is actually quite nice. I really like it. I like the significant setbacks that you did at the third floor. Pulling in the corners, I think is very successful as well. Adding in a lot of those landscape buffers on the third floor to again pull back where people might gather in those third floor open spaces really does actually try to address one of the public comments about parties happening up there. So there'll be some green buffer for those gathering areas on the third floor. I particularly like the use of the materials. I think it's well executed. The use of bamboo is appreciated as being a much more sustainable material. And I heard the question about the stucco on the recessed areas on the north and south facades there. But I think that the amount of articulation that is there, the use of the porcelain tiles on the corners, I think is well executed. I would just encourage that where you see in the renderings the depth perception of some of the differences between the color of the stucco and the treatment of the tiles, that it really be reinforced. It's not quite clear in the plans that there is a separation there, even though the rendering shows like some shadows there. So I would definitely encourage that, because having that articulation is definitely lends to the quality of the design as I see it. I do still have some reservations about these third floor open spaces. The fact that these three, kind of penthouse units open directly onto with big wide sliding doors onto what is purported to be a public open space, or a common open space, I should say, for anyone in the building. I think in practice they will end up being private patios for the residents of those units, which I think is not what is required here. So I would definitely want to make sure that as the project is done, that those are respected as common open spaces and not consumed by the residents in those units as their own private patios, which I think with the design, with those large opening doors and windows, would tend to become. So other than that, I support the project. I think it's very well executed. I think it's a lovely design. I again think that the applicant has been modest in how he has approached it, and I am in support.
Board Member Welsh. Board Member Chagayan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I won't speak too much, but I concur with both what Chair Simonian said and Board Member Welsh. As they stated, there's some things that sort of outside our purview, but also with what the applicant could have designed here, it is a fairly moderate for the density bonus project. I agree that I in favor and in support of this project. I think it's a nice design. I appreciate the amount of open space and especially the landscaping. I think, even adding the planter boxes really helps give it some much needed greenery. And I concur with Board Member Welsh's comment about the common open spaces on the third floor. I think even as a person who is going to rent a unit up there, and every other unit has a private space, why not try to design some sort of private portion for those units and then still keep a common open space for the building. I think that was the majority of my comments. I could go either way with what Mr. Simonian said about the stucco. I think there's a nice mix of texture and materials that I could go either way with that. But otherwise in support of the project. Thank you.
Board Member Diane, Board Member Lockeroff.
Hi, I would like to echo what everyone has said. I really think this is a well-designed building. I think that the designer set the 3-story portion of the building so far back from the front of the street that it won't be even noticeable from the street. I appreciate where they chose to put the 2-story volumes, and I also, I hear the concerns about parking, but again, he went above and beyond. I think the was it 38 spaces for 17 units is great, and yeah, I support the project as well.
Thank you. In regards to my thoughts, I concur with my board members on most items, and I'd like to kind of echo in some new thoughts as well. Overall, I agree with the site planning. I think the way the building is laid out, where it has the transition of height from the, street with the massing stepping up from 2-story to 3 stories works really well. I do think that the rooftop open space is an amenity and it's going to be used quite a bit. And that is also something that should be commended. At the same time, we need housing. This is close to all the studios. And so this is exactly the type of housing that is needed in our community, close by to the studios. And so that is encouraging as well. I think the applicant has done a good job providing more parking than required, which is going to make the units that much more feasible. And as I said, less impact on the neighborhood. There are, I think, just 2 areas that I would provide some additional thoughts on. One would be what has already been brought forth in regards to the rooftop deck and the common open spaces that are really placed next to these units. As I'm looking on sheet A5, which is the 3rd floor plan, I think if some of those walkways, let's say leading to the front open spaces, become a little wider, they won't make a significant difference to the courtyard design in regards to light.
There appears to be a technical difficulty with Chair Simonian's internet. Ah, there he is. Nope, still. We'll just take a moment to see if board member or if Chair Simonian's internet comes back online. And if not, then we will take a short recess.
Maybe he could email us his final comment. He only had 2 and he's given us 1.
That is him calling. 1 second, please. Okay, Chair Simonian is continuing to have internet problems, so he will be joining us by telephone. So the only problem is I'm hoping this works. And meanwhile, so will be the first time that we have a board member call in via telephone. Hopefully, he's successful.
Any good architecture jokes? No?
Do you have one, Jay?
I thought you'd never ask, but no, I don't. But if you, it's like in the movie To Have and Have Not, where the old coot character played by Walter Brennan asks everyone who he can ask, "You ever been bit by a dead bee?" And they just dismiss him and don't want to talk to him. And then he asks Lauren Bacall, and she says, "No, have you?" And he's like, "I knew I liked you." And that just proved the need for a recess, should we, Lilia?
I believe so. I think we should probably.
Worst case, if he can't do that, I think it would work if you put him on speakerphone and moved your phone. I think that would still do the trick. So
We can try that. I just sent him the telephone numbers to log in. Yes, and why do we take a 2-minute recess? And we will join, and hopefully we will have Mr. Simonian or Chair Simonian back with us. Thank you. One second. Oh. Okay. Anine is joining us in just one moment. Okay, welcome back to the Design Review Board. Chair Simonian was having technical difficulties with his internet provider, and unfortunately, he can no longer join us via WebEx by video, so he has called in, and he would like to finish his comments. So, Chair Simonian, please.
Thank you, Ms. Zematitis, and I apologize about that. We've had 2 years of remote hearings without too many glitches, but I guess tonight was the evening for me to have a glitch, so I apologize about that. As I was indicating, overall, I do think that the project is well designed. I mentioned already about the transition in height, which is correct, and I also mentioned the fact that the parking is overlay park, which is wonderful. And I think there are just two areas that I would concentrate some thoughts on. One being that common open space, as already been discussed, can perhaps be better designed to be more common, quote unquote. I think, let's say, the front two common open spaces, and I don't have any drawings for me, so I'm going off of memory. The two walkways that lead to the common open spaces could perhaps get a little wider as they're coming closer to the common open space to make them more inviting and more usable. And by doing that, I'll actually create an overhang anyways, which will create more of a covered, protected entryway below up the stairs in the building. So I think that would make it more common and more inviting. I do think that we should perhaps condition replacement of the sliding windows to sliding doors to regular windows. I think if logic would dictate that if you're going to have a common open space next to a unit, you would not put sliding doors there for privacy reasons, unless it was going to be used more for private reasons, which we don't want occurring. And so I would take a step further and bring forth the idea of replacing those sliding doors with sliding windows. The other area that I think could significantly help the project is the front facade and also the courtyard facade. The materials, there's good variety of materials, and the materials are of high caliber, and that is a plus. However, when I'm looking at second to last rendering, or I was looking at it before getting cut off, there does not seem to be an overall design language to the front facade. It seems a bit haphazard. For example, the planners that were placed in the upper floor levels, those are going to be hard to maintain. So it's either going to be up to the unit owner or tenant to maintain them, or they're just not going to be there in the future. And so any kind of planners that are in rental units in the past have been problematic. And so if I just take that away from the facade and all of a sudden it does not have a design language, and I think we could take that a step further, because if the front facade is just worked on a bit more and massaged a bit more, that language will then turn the corner and go into the courtyard, which will create more of a meaningful, I think, street presence. So those would be my thoughts for the front facade and perhaps the courtyard. In regard to the south and north, well, the porcelain tile is of high quality, and that is nice. It could probably benefit from some breakage of that mass, but it's not as crucial to me as I would say the front and also that courtyard. And so since I'm calling in, I can't really see all the other board members, and so perhaps I could pass along the gavel to our former chair, Chair Welch, and this way there will be a person that's visibly seeing the other board members, etc., that could conduct the hearing in that reasonable manner. And I will pass along the gavel and open it up for deliberation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. In light of Mr. Simonian's comments, do we have any reactions from other board members who'd like to chime in? Board member Chagayan, go ahead.
Yes, I think we were all sort of had a consensus regarding that open common space, and I liked his idea about putting it as a condition to change the sliding glass doors to windows to avoid having that become private space.
Any reaction to the comment about the planter boxes?
I mean, once Mr. Simonian expressed his thoughts further regarding that, I mean, I could see that happening, and I would agree, but I'm not sure how. I'm not sure if he left that as a condition in terms of, is it more of, and maybe this is just an open question, do you feel like you're putting a condition to sort of finesse the front and the courtyard, or are you going to be a little bit?
I think so. I think it would be a condition for the applicant to work with planning staff to push the front facade, and not push, but to rework the front facade and also the interior courtyard to have a more meaningful design language, or cohesive design language, perhaps.
Without relying heavily on the use of planters, is that
correct?
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, I would support that.
And is it time for me to ask for clarification on that? Because one thought Mr. Simonian offered about wrapping something around the corner, I wasn't sure what you meant there. Would that be the wood-clad kind of balcony type elements wrapping, or a different material? I didn't catch that quite.
It could be, Mr. Platt, and unfortunately, I had the renderings in front of me, right? And now I don't. But I do remember that the way the balconies popped out with the wood siding seemed a bit odd. It wasn't as refined. And it could be a good opportunity to wrap some of that material around into the courtyard, or it could be some of the surrounding material as well that goes into the courtyard. It just seemed as though the courtyard has more of a Motel 6 feel with all that stucco and those vertical railings in the background, and it is stepping back so nicely, and it's creating the relief in the middle. It's got the U shape, so a lot of good design moves have occurred, and I just feel as though if staff works with the applicant with a bit more of a focus on that design language on the facade and the way it wraps into the corners, it would really benefit the project.
Okay, so we can leave a somewhat open-ended condition to provide more visual interest at the sides of the courtyard facing the street, and provide better integration between materials and features from the front to those sides, something like that?
I think so.
And if I could just continue, we had the same condition at staff level about maintenance of the plants, but we left it to you to go there, which the board has done fairly consistently over the years. If those planters went away, we would just have windows stranded in kind of recessed stucco wall areas. Would it be acceptable to maintain the presence of that material or a similar material to fill those areas? It could just form a shelf ultimately that wouldn't be usable, but would still provide the articulation and the material change?
I think so. I think the idea would be not to just get rid of the planters and just leave them as is, but to work out an idea that fits well within that design motif that staff would work with the applicant on.
So a condition, something like convert planters into architectural elements that retain the same design intent without the planting.
I think that's well said.
And while I have you in my questioning, in the past, the board, we've had this issue of separating private open space from common open space on a lot of our smaller apartment buildings where we don't have as much space to play with. I wonder if it would be possible to maintain an outdoor space for those units that was somehow screened by either plantings or perhaps a screen wall, but probably more ideally by plantings, allowing those units to have their private space that's adjacent to the common space, but visually separated from. Is that something the board would entertain, or?
Yeah, I was actually going to make that suggestion because they did provide more common open space than was required. So there's looks like there's a little bit of wiggle room in there that they could carve out some of that to provide some additional private space for those units.
Yeah, there's so much landscaping on each deck area, they could redistribute that in a way that would provide the separation. Mr. Simonian, are you okay with that since that was your recommendation?
I am. At the end of the day, we're trying to create more usable open space or private space that is where people could sit and enjoy the outdoors or work from home, etc. And some of the higher planners that are on these roof decks, they do meet the intent of, let's say, the percentage of landscaping, but they're not as usable from that point of view. And so, yes, absolutely, I think that's a good idea.
Any other comments? Add to the mix? Okay, so Mr. Platt, do you have what you think is appropriate conditions representing the consensus of the board?
Sure, I think everyone agreed about the common space issues at the roof. I didn't hear concurrence on widening the walkways at the front portion, but I assume that that's acceptable. That
Yes.
could also lead to a way to perhaps tie things together from front to side, possibly, so we can work with the architect on that. We have the issue of removing the front planters and converting those into architectural features that have the same design intent. Providing additional articulation and materials at the side facades at the front two-story volumes to provide better integration between the design and materials at those adjoining facades. We have to avoid the amount of stucco on those sides. Although I think that's not stucco. Is that not porcelain tile? I can't remember. Eileen might know.
I believe it's stucco in there.
It's stucco, okay. So to reduce the amount of stucco, and then we'll redistribute the rooftop landscaping or provide other means to establish a private space for the 3 upper units that have doors to those terraces while providing required common open space that's buffered and separated somehow. That's everything I've got, I believe. And then there's the staff condition about the urban forestry requirements.
Board Member Chigai?
Oh, I was just gonna move to approve the project with the modified conditions.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right.
Okay, this is a roll call. Board Member Welch,
Yes.
Board Member Chikayan,
Yes.
Board Member Lakarev,
Yes.
and Chairperson Simonian.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Motion passed.
And I wanted to, again, welcome our newest board member, Board Member Lakaroff. We look forward to working with you. Thank you so much for joining the board, and we certainly could use the help, so thank you.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you all.
Thank you very much from everybody. Thanks a lot.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we adjourn.
Adjourned.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Right.
Thank you. Good night.